And coming up next, none other than Mr. Richard Lau, representing short.com today. And as a reminder, if there's a lot of feedback, these headphones are really cool. You can try them out and hear 100% Richard. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So yeah, I'm just going to chat today. Basically, Shore.com is a buyer's agent for startup companies looking for domain names. And so I thought I would talk through my experience of how to track down domain name owners and talk about tools and tricks and being tenacious. And so if you're a domain investor, and you're wanting to track down owners like I do. I've been in the domain name business for 25 years. Started out as a domain name registrar, one of the first 30. Started NamesCon about 10 years ago, which is now part of the CloudFest family. And I've got my hands in lots of different companies, Domain Easy, Domain Tools, Logo.com, built and sold Resume.com, built that up to about 15 people and sold that to Indeed. We're doing the same with Logo.com right now. We're one of the top logo providers, free logos, and then we add additional services onto that. 12 people based in Vancouver, Canada. But Short.com is one of my little babies. So Domain Tools, I was actually an advisor to Domain Tools for 12 years. They started out being focusing on domainers, domain investors, and then expanded out into enterprise. So they provide a lot of domain data to government agencies, large corporations. But the tools that are still there are super good for us, especially the Who Is history is worth paying for, because now you'll go in and a domain name when you're checking the registry, the registrar will inevitably have privacy. 90% chance that it's going to have privacy on it. But if you go through the Who Is history, especially for premium domain names, chances are the current owner has had it for a long time. So at some point in the past, they will have likely had their ownership information not behind privacy. So that's where the Who Is history comes in. You can also use their reverse Who Is, so that you're searching on either their phone number, their email address, their address, and you can use that to identify what other domain names they have, and then you go and visit them. And so yeah, you're looking at any clues that you can, right? When I'm investigating a super premium domain name where you can't easily contact the owner, I have my notepad open, I have spreadsheets open, and I'm just putting in notes. And you're looking for clues. You're a PI basically. Obviously, watch lists. If you're more patient and you're waiting on a domain name, you can just look for any time it has a change. But the Who Is history and the reverse Who Is are really the ones that you're after. So now you've got a semblance of, hopefully you've got a name, possibly an email address, but you're going to jump into LinkedIn and, even though you're giving money to Microsoft, it's worth paying for the premium service to be able to cut through the noise, send as many messages as you can. You might have just the company name and no contact. So then hit everybody. Right? We all complain that LinkedIn is you're being spammed by job offers, etc. Join in the noise, but you're cutting through by sending a direct message versus sending an email. It works. You send an email and you send it to LinkedIn, and especially if you can find yourself that there is a mutual contact, mention that in the connection request, and you're very likely to get a reply. But you're looking for anyone at that company. You're looking for anyone who's used to work at that company. You're asking people for help. Like, hey, I'm looking for John Smith. Can you help me out? I think you worked with him in the past. It works. So everything I'm showing you here is stuff that I've been doing for 25 years. Emails. So obviously, you might know their name, you might know the company they're with, but not have their email address. So just guess. What does it cost you? Just first name dot last name, first initial, info at, support at, maybe what their nickname might have been. You're looking at any which way you can send an email. And I use Superhuman, superhuman.com. Automatically inserts a pixel into every single email message that you send, so that you can see who opened it and when, how many times they've opened it, and persistence. This is about being tenacious. So daily follow-ups. You're being the squeaky wheel. Every day I get emails from GoDaddy saying, hey, someone is interested in your domain name. And the email address that it's from is like emilyhorton614@gmail.com. Right? I don't even bother replying. I'm just like, absolute archive, delete, etc. So what you're wanting to do is to make sure that you're mixing it up. You're not just sending them one email that looks like, oh, this is just a who is spammer. You're sending them a long email explaining who you are. Then you follow that up 12 hours later and like, hey, I'm actually sitting here waiting for you to reply. I saw that you opened my last one. Maybe you don't say that on the first time, but that you're following up constantly, right? Hey, I've got a client here. This is time dependent. It's Friday. I'm hoping that you're going to see this before Monday. You send them another email on Saturday. You send them another email on Sunday. On Monday, you're like, hey, I'm just making sure you got all my emails from the weekend because my client needs to make a decision this week, right? You want to keep that time pressure up so that they actually know that there's a real human sending that email to them. And you're really wanting to make sure that they don't think that you're AI or spam. White pages. This is old school. Whitepages.com, but there's a lot of other competitors. And quite often, I pay for the subscriptions. There's People Finder, there's Lookup. There's a lot of different ones that are mostly powered by Intellius out of Washington State. They're the scorn because they're buying and selling all of our data, right? But use that to your advantage here. You would be surprised, especially if the owner is located in the United States. The amount of information that is available on Americans is insane. And it kind of shows you why we have the GDRP in Europe. If you have the make of a person's car or the license number, you can get their VIN number, you can get their address, you can get insane amount of information. So, and if you don't, if you're rubbing your nickels together, you can just look around at all of the different competitors to White Pages, and quite often they'll give you teasers of information. Quite often that's an email address or one or two phone numbers, and quite often that's enough. So you don't necessarily have to pay the $20 for the background check. Text all of their phone numbers. When you do it the first time, they think it's a spam. When you do it a second time, and you're changing up the message, you're making sure the verbiage shows that you're a real person. These are very effective. I use Google Voice. I don't necessarily want to have my personal cell phone number being blasted out. So it allows you to send texts from your, it's just super easy, protects your privacy a little bit, and it's also allows you to phone them, receive voicemails back and forth. It's a perfect phone number for this type of service. One of my recent ones, I used YouTube to connect to the owner. They had a domain name, 2-word domain. His the parents had registered it. It was realty related. Registered in like 2002. They never had a website, no email operating on it. Who has privacy? But I did find a YouTube channel, and it had 3 videos on it. And so the guy is driving his one wheel around town and just chatting. And I watched the whole 45 minutes, listen to it. Use that to find a phone number, hit it through Google Voice, and 6 months. 6 months of voicemail of texting him back and forth until he finally agreed to sell it to my client. And that was a 6-figure deal. I take a percentage. It took a lot of work, but behind it is another lesson on how do you get these people to respond. And why he finally actually replied to me is because I had mentioned in one of my text messages, hey, I really enjoyed your one wheel. My brother does the same, blah, blah, blah. Just establishing a relationship beyond the, hey, I want to buy your domain name. And finally he replied, and he's like, man, you are tenacious. Your client must be, have a big budget. And we did go back and forth, but we finally did get that domain off him. Socials is a lot of fun because you can go down a big rabbit hole on this. But you're obviously looking for. Hopefully, they've got something in LinkedIn, Instagram. But if they've been silent for a while, maybe they've passed away, you're looking at Facebook. Recently had a client who was looking for a 3-letter.com, had a $500,000 budget on this domain, and they'd spent 2 years trying to get a response from the owner. And so I went on. I saw that I was connected to the owner on LinkedIn through a mutual, through Paul Vixie. Message, no reply, just radio silence. So finally, one day I'm like, okay, get on Facebook, start digging, dig. He's dead. So then what do? Do you stop, go back to your client, say, I'm sorry, he's dead? No. You contact his wife, you contact his kids very, very sensitively, right? I mean, you have to, but at this point, I contacted his wife, no reply. Contacted his kids, no reply. Contacted his wife again, still no reply. So, hang on, I'm going to go all the way over here. So I sent her an edible arrangement. And I asked the delivery driver to send me a picture when it was delivered. And he sent me a picture. I sent her an email immediately saying, I see you've received my gift. Again, my condolences. Would you be open to a phone call? And we did have a phone call. She's severely attached to the domain name because that was her husband's domain name as one of the last things. We couldn't buy it off her for $500,000. Her kids are in school, like going to university. I'm like, money is a tool. I thought we could get a deal together. We couldn't, but I just wanted to have that relationship, have that conversation. So now I can go back to my client and say, it's not possible, but it's not an unknown, right? Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, everything, right? Don't be afraid to just reach out. Again, obviously, you go through your spouses. One of my early ones, 2004, I was contacting a client, and he was like, "No, absolutely not interested, not interested." And I'm like, money's a tool, etc. Finally, I call one day, and his wife answers the phone. I'm like, "Oh, great." I'm like, "Oh, is Paul around?" I'm talking, and I don't just leave it. All right. We'll wrap it up in 10 minutes. We can all go down there. So I contacted, where was I? Actually threw me. Yes, the wife answered, and instead of saying, "Oh, it's Richard from Canada," is Paul around? I'm like, "Oh, it's Richard from Canada. I'm talking with your husband about buying his domain name for $1 million, right?" And she's like, "Oh, really? Hey, yeah, 99.com. What would you be able to do with that? Would you what? You get the spouse spending the money." 2 days later, we had a deal. My client bought the domain name for $1 million. So you're doing it with sensitivity. You're doing it with respect. I'm not throwing him under the bus. I'm just planting a seed. Kids and relatives. This works amazingly, especially the relatives. So if I'm contacting John and John's just silent, and I can see that he's looking at my emails, right? But I just want a conversation. I want to be able to go back to my client with a yes or a no, not an "I'm sorry, I failed. He wouldn't reply to me." So I get on Facebook and I go through all of their friends. I'm like, "Oh, John's in St. Louis." Okay, well, I'll just go through all of his friends and I'll contact every single one that has the same last name as John that's in St. Louis and say, "I'm looking for John. Is he alive? Is he okay? I want to buy something. I want to give him money." You try all kinds of different methods of the verbiage of the message, and that's where you start. And then you do your second circle, and you do your third circle, and you do your fourth circle, right? The client has hired you because you're an expert in domain names. But if you add on this layer of being tenacious, and then you'll prove to them why you're worth the percentage that they're paying you to acquire the domain name. So it is a bit of a last resort. It's definitely for the higher value ones. It's definitely for the ones where you're going to get paid for the time that you're putting in, because it does take a lot of time. It does take a lot of effort. Neighbours. I once had a client where the domain name was it was in a small village outside of Aberdeen, Scotland. Well, there were only 25 neighbors in the whole village. Guess who I called? Every single one of them. I got through to his mother, and I called on a Sunday. And I had read a book about skip tracing, bill collecting, et cetera. And one of their tips was, if you're talking to an older person, especially in England or Europe, if they think you're calling long distance, their instinct is you're paying $3 a minute, right? That's what they grew up with. So his mother answers the phone. Immediately, I know she's elderly. I'm like, "It's Richard. I'm calling from Canada. Is Sean there?" She's like, "You're just in luck. He's in the backyard." So she goes and gets him. He gets on the phone. His first words to me are swear words, right? "What the blanket are you calling my mother blanket for?" I'm like, "Sean, if you just reply to my emails, I wouldn't have to call your mother." Okay? So now we have a conversation going back and forth. A few weeks later, he goes radio silent again. Who do I call? I call his mother. I'm like, "It's Richard from Scotland. I can't find Sean's mobile. Can you send it to me?" She gives me his mobile number. I send him a text. I'm like, "Your mom just gave me your number. Can we talk again?" We did get the domain. It paid off my house. Tenacity works. Still polite. At no point am I swearing back at him. I'm taking the hits. I understand you're not liking the invasion of your privacy, but just talk to me. We're having a conversation. Don't ghost me. I do not believe in ghosting. In dating or in business, ghosting is impolite, and I will not receive ghosting. I will send you an edible arrangement. Cost me $150 so that you have the opportunity to talk to me. But don't ghost me. They shouldn't ghost you. We're trying to establish a relationship. We're trying to give them money. If they don't want to, then they can simply politely say no. And then we can go to our clients and say, "Let's move on to the next one." Again, this edible arrangement was fantastic. I've done edible arrangements, but there's lots of other things you can do. But what I like about edible arrangements is they will take a picture and send it to you as soon as it's delivered. In person. I have done deals in person to close the deal. Actually paid cash for a domain name. But in general, it's enough to propose an in-person visit to get them to reply to you. So if you're talking with John and he's not responding and you're like, John, I'm going to be in your neighborhood in 2 weeks. How about we meet for coffee? Then they're like, well, I don't want to meet him in person. I'll just reply to his email, right? And that's good enough. All we need is the conversation. Having said that, sometimes it is great. You know, you're like, oh, I'm going down to LA for a conference. Can we meet for 15 minutes? I got a reply saying, yes, come to my office. Perfect. I flew down there. I didn't even go to the conference. I just went to the meeting. You know, what does it cost me? $600? In the scheme of things, it's a lot of money for that 15 minutes, whether it's going to work or not. You don't know if it's going to work. You're just taking a gamble, but you're being tenacious. Even if that doesn't work out, it's something that you can then hang your hat on when you're talking to the next client on the lengths that you're willing to go to work for them, and that's the reason that they're hiring you to be the buyer's broker for them. That's it. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn. I reply to everybody. And I am Richard Lau from short.com. Any questions?
Presentation. I don't have a specific question, but boy, I want to hear stories for hours. Are there any specific? You are allowed to ask specific questions, though. Do you have any?
Yeah, so thank you for the presentation. It was very good. How do you work with your clients and how do they choose a domain name? Because you took the example of the 99.com. Is that your client absolutely wanted 99.com and then you go to find it, or they wanted a double-digit number? Like, how does it work?
In general, my clients have a specific domain name in mind. So, you know, I've been in this business a long time. I have my own portfolio. I've represented sellers, and I have only recently taken on the buyer's agent role very seriously, recently being the last 5 years. But what I love about it is that clients are coming to you and they're saying, I want that house, right? And so you're like, okay, well, I'm going to try and get you that house, or I'm going to try and find you something similar. Whereas if the client comes to you and says, I don't know, just need a domain, just need any house. I'm like, you know, we can brainstorm, but I like the buyer who's like, I want that purple house right there on that block. And that person isn't answering their door. That's perfect. That's where you're justifying the 10 or 15% that you're charging them over top of the purchase price. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, you're not just brokering in terms of like why is someone hiring you to be a buyer's broker for them instead of just using domain agents or GoDaddy's broker service, right? It's generally they either have a conversation going with them and they're not satisfied with the price, and so then you are I could do another talk on this, but you're coming up with creative ways to set up the transaction. So it's not just a cash purchase, it's it could be a rental over time with an option to purchase. It could be a payment plan. It could be your client is putting down a deposit and the rest is being financed through domain capital. So there's lots of different things that you can bring in terms of creativity to closing the deal that they're not going to get if they are simply using the registrar's brokerage service. The other is that you are unlocking, as you say, unlocking the stuck transaction. Either the owner is not responding, which is very often the case, or they're just too emotionally involved. right? And so the buyer can be passionate with you, but you can be level-headed with the domain owner. And likewise, some sellers are passionate and crazy, as I am, and so you can settle that down and just be the referee. Yeah.
Hi, Richard. Yeah, I receive a lot of emails asking to buy domain names, sometimes with a price, sometimes without. And I reply to very few of them. And this might seem strange, but it's because the emails are virtually anonymous. They say nothing about who's selling the email, or who the broker is, what their website is. It's just a strange Gmail. Nor do they ever say anything about what they would do with the domain, or give some clue in that.
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on. That's why, whether I'm sending them a text, whether I'm sending them an email, when I had the email slide up, it said long and short. In the long email, I'm saying, I am Richard Lau. This is my LinkedIn profile. This is a link to me. This is my website. This is my phone number. This is my client. I won't say who my client is, but I'm representing a client. We're prepared to pay. I don't usually include a number in there, but I might use a word like substantial, fair market value, say that, these are other domain names that we've done in the past year, hill.com, closed that in January. Story.com did that last year, right? Show that you have a record, that you are a real person, that you are a real brokerage, because otherwise it's most likely just who is spam. Another domain broker who's building up a newsletter and is just like, hey, do you have, petslondon.com for sale? And then you say yes, and then he just takes that out and puts it in his newsletter. So yeah, I generally don't respond to those either, because if they're not approaching it as, hey, this is Jeff from Saw, I'm interested in your domain, I have a client who's willing to pay, I'm like, chances are it's not real.
Thank you. Any other questions? Richard, you are a wealth of knowledge. Richard is very selective about speaking and careful that he always has something new and useful and relevant. This was really interesting and enjoyable. Can we give you, are you going to get like a nickname like Tenacious R or something?
I am called Tracker Rich.
Tracker
Yeah.
Rich. Oh, you were the first to know? First public announcement?
No. I've been known as that for about 25 years.
What?
Yeah.
Are you going to release like a
No.
music video, a short?
Maybe AI generated.
I'm in. All right. Well, thank you, Richard.
Thank you.